to College COD. We're down for the Division 2 qualifiers, the second part of Division 2 qualifiers at least. My name's Infinity. Joining me on the desk is Propercast, my good friend across the pond. Andy, mate, it's good to see you smiling as always.
Yeah, it's always fantastic to be here casting Call of Duty with you, Brody. Wouldn't have it any other way. Back for another season of College COD. There's so many collegiate teams still ready to duke it out to qualify for Division 2.
Yeah, mate, it's just nice, I've got to say it, just to be here again, right? The last time I got to cast College COD, I'm going to throw people back years now, it was like 2020, like one of the very first seasons of the entire thing. So it's good to be back, man. College COD, it's such a special thing. Of course, Grassroots Esports, it's just nice to be here. But of course, there's already been a lot of action already gone down yesterday. Of course, this is day number 2 of the Division 2 qualifiers.
Yeah, I mean, as far as qualifiers are concerned, you really have, I want to say, like a labyrinth of different teams that you have to be able to cut through. There's so many different teams across 4 different regions, keep in mind you, that you have to then beat just to qualify for Division 2. So you think that the season's going to be long. The qualifier is even longer. It's an absolute grueler for some of these young individuals to get through.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, there's a lot, I think, to get through. There's a lot in terms of the formatting that we need to get through as well. But don't worry, we have an old wizard here to talk you through it.
Welcome to CCL 2023, where College COD is back for its 5th season. Due to scheduling conflicts and feedback from our community, we have decided to revise our announced format for the 2023 season. This year, teams will be divided into 4 regions based on their geographical location. Starting in the last week of January, the College COD season will begin with 2 regional qualifiers that will divide each region into 2 divisions, Division 1 and Division 2. The top 12 teams from each region's first qualifier will make up the 48 total teams in Division 1, whereas the top 12 teams from each region's second qualifier will make up the 48 total teams in Division 2. Both divisions in each region will play each other in their own 6-week season, playing every team in their division once. Following the regular season, every team in Division 1 in each region will automatically advance to playoffs, with the top 8 receiving a first-round bye. The top 4 teams from Division 2 in each region will also advance to playoffs, whereas the bottom 8 teams will have to fight through Season 5's playoff LCQ. The teams that did not qualify for Division 1 or Division 2 will be placed in their region's open division. Open divisions will be divided into groups of 12 that will play their own 6-week season, identical to the teams in Division 1 and Division 2. The top 16 teams from each region's open division will advance to the LCQ, where they will have their chance to fight for a spot in the Season 5 playoffs. Each region will host their own LCQ, where the top 8 will advance to regional playoffs. Each region will also host their own 24-team playoff, where the winner of each playoff will secure one of the first 4 spots to fight for a championship on LAN. The final teams will be determined by a LAN qualifier. Teams who place 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in their respective playoff will be seeded into 4 groups of 3, where round-robin play and a single elimination bracket will determine the final 4 teams who will go to LAN with their shot at becoming the Season 5 College COD champions.
Alrighty, well there you have it. A little look at the formatting for the 2023 season. But if you didn't think that video was enough, well don't worry, we have a handy little graphic to show you guys how everything will work. Of course, we have 4 different regions there. You can see it just in the little bracket just below what those regions are. Each one consisting of a 64-team double elimination bracket here in the qualifiers. 12 remaining teams at the end of that then will be moving forward into Division 2. 8 teams from the upper bracket and 4 teams, Andy, from the lower bracket that we have going today.
That broken glass on the screen? Someone's got to call Son of Pain and get him to come sweep that up. Someone could really get hurt over that. Yeah, it's interesting is the entire format, right? And I think one of my favorite parts just about the format altogether, including with all of these qualifiers for each of the divisions, that when we get later on down the road, I said the same thing last year, everybody has a chance to be able to make it towards playoffs at the end of the road.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is the nice thing, obviously, you know, with just Grassroots Esports, at the end of the day, it's kind of about making your name for yourself. Obviously, there's a sweet prize pool to talk about, which we'll talk about here in just a second, but obviously, you know, you do get that chance, ultimately, you know, to be in the spotlight. That's the beauty here of the CCL. But I mentioned it, let's get into it. Let's talk about the pricing that we have on offer for all these teams at the end of the road. $40,000! Andy, mate, that prize pool increases exponentially every single damn year. It is a beautiful prize pool this time around.
First place, obviously, walking away with $16,000, even $8,000 for second place. There's a hefty amount of schmeckles on the line at the end of the road, but it even goes beyond that as well, to be able to really prove yourself as a collegiate athlete, representing your school, making your way towards being one of the greats, not only for college COD, also when you think about challengers, and hell, you even could be making your way towards the CDL at one point in time. Think about some of the greats that have already come through our room here of CCL. I mean, you got Kevin Fame, Minnesota Rocker, Odan Gozi from Illini. Now he's picked up by Optic. Oh, man, it's just such a cool setting to be able to see what is going to potentially be the future of Call of Duty esports here with Collegiate.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way, right? Because I think the CCL over time has gained a notoriety. Not in a bad way by any means, but there's been more and more players kind of being introduced to the CCL, and obviously the names that have kind of come from it have gone to it as well. There's just a lot of no names now, I think. And that definitely will not change this year, even if a couple of names such as Odan Ghosty will not be competing in CCL this time around. Shout out to him, by the way, over on Optic. He's doing pretty well for himself, and he absolutely deserves it. But as we said, CCL, we've got a lot to talk about here. We just went through the formatting. We couldn't do any of it, though, without our wonderful sponsors. You guys can see it right below, of course, the Navy and Fandom. Shout out to those guys for supporting everything that we do here. And yeah, you know, in regards to the Navy, I think just generally speaking, you know, a little bit about the Navy, for those of you guys who don't know, it's the most highly skilled, technologically advanced military force in the world. And yet, that absolutely pains me to say, even as a Brit, the Navy offers more than 60 career fields in leading edge areas such as nuclear engineering, special warfare, cryptology, information systems, and healthcare. There are also enlisted career paths in fields that are not widely associated with the Navy, including music, journalism, culinary arts, marketing, law enforcement, and yes, even esports. So if you guys want to go check those guys out, America's Navy, please absolutely do, and thank you to them to supporting the CCL this year, and of course Fandom as well. But we have a match coming up very, very soon. Army West Point versus USNA Esports. I believe before we get there, though, we're going to have a little quick look at the schedule ahead of us for today and kind of what is coming up, or what's coming up very, very soon. But, you know, Andy, you know, CCL again, we've got a few matches ahead of us today. We're really looking forward to it, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, again, there's so many different colleges, even across the United States playing. Geographically split up into 4 different regions. There can only be one champion at the end of the road, obviously, but we do have to end up qualifying at least 4 more teams through the lower bracket today. And, I mean, you can even see above of our heads. The Mules versus the Goats. Army West Point versus the Naval Academy. I mean, this is a kind of a rivalry that's been going on for a long time in sports history, for what it's worth, here in Call of Duty esports, especially talking to a lot of those Navy guys at Raleigh when they were there for the Code Bowl. They are very passionate about Call of Duty. They've been playing it for a long time. I'm hoping that the Naval Academy with the Goats are going to be able to bring the same exact fire to the game.
All right, well, very briefly here, I believe we do actually have teams to talk about from for the first day of the qualifiers. We obviously had yesterday, we had 8 teams qualifying, I believe, from each section, each region. So we'll go very briefly through this one. Here is a look at the Southeast region, USF Esports, Shenandoah Esports. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I apologize. Yeah. I will say this much, you know, as a Brit returning to the CCL for like the first time in like 3 years, Andy, I'm going to have like an education in geography by the end of the year of America. Like I'll know so much. You could like test me and I'd absolutely.
Got Season 0 champions also making the reprise. I don't think we've had a single season of College COD so far where the Eagles of Georgia Southern University aren't playing. Shout out FGC as well. I got to meet Kirch a couple weeks ago. He was playing at a LAN here in Charlotte, and those guys are passionate, to say the least. Ole Miss also making their way back.
Yes.
Got a nice, big old warming heart for Niner Esports, the local college for me personally. But, yeah, man, hopefully we can get you maybe listing all 50 states at the end of the road here, Brody.
I could probably do like 2 or 3 at the moment, like, you know, the North and South ones. Yeah, North Carolina, South Carolina. There we go. Isn't there a Dakota as well? Is that a thing? I don't know. Regardless. Yes, thank you. See, I can do 4. Brilliant, guys. Regardless, here's a look over at the Northwest region, or Northeast region, excuse me. York Esports, McMaster Marauders, UOFT, COD, MSU Cycle Force, Carlton Esports, which is another one that obviously I got to cast over, I believe it's 3 years ago. Ottawa Braves, RIT Esports, and Western Esports here in the Northeast.
Another returning champion college, that of the Ottawa Braves. E2N Lightning, those are 2 individuals that are pretty historic when it comes down to not only just challengers, but also in the collegiate action as well, just bringing the passion and continuing on with the Braves mantle as well. Looking forward to seeing more of them the rest of the year.
All right, well, let's see. Hope that bravery turns out pretty well for them as we go into Division 2. But here's a look at Division 2 so far for the Midwest region. Ball State Esports, EMU Esports, Wisconsin COD, Iowa Esports, ICC Pirates, Trojans Esports, Purdue, which is another one of those names that I got a chance to cast over a few years ago, and Windsor Esports. Any names here to look for, Randy?
Purdue is just a returning college over and over again. Obviously, some different names being represented by Purdue, but even more so than that, that college itself is historic for maybe all of the different funny reasons of what we have behind the scenes. A lot of inside jokes between me and Shift when it comes down to Purdue as a whole. But yeah, Iowa Esports making their way back. Always fantastic to be able to see these returning schools with some familiar names along the way.
All right, and then finally, of course, we've got the final region to get through here before getting ourselves back to the 2 box. West region, Oregon State Esports, UTSA Roadrunners, Arizona State, SFSU Gaming Gators. What a beautiful name. CSUF Esports, CLUA LA Esports at Lamar Quad, and C Boulder.
Yeah, Colorado Boulder University is another returning college as well. I mean, there's almost a dozen of them that you're going to hear me like a broken record at the end of the year just talking about the returning colleges. One of which that does stick out like a sore thumb is going to be ASU, the Sun Devils. You see them there, third on the list in the top row. First year that we're not going to be seeing young Fishney being represented for the Sun Devils as well. So it's very interesting to say the least, but hey, got to always sing the praises for what the Sun Devils bring to the table. Very passionate college.
All right, well, that was a look over towards kind of what's been going on so far. You know, as we said, you've got 8 teams already qualified, Andy. We've got to get 4 more by the lower bracket. We were actually taking a little look at the bracket before we got into it. There were like the brackets for each region. There's still a pretty long run for these guys. 3 to 4 matches still to play.
Yeah, I mean, even for our first match for the docket, I mean, in between West Point and USNA, like they including this match, they still have to win 4 matches in total on this very day just to qualify for Division 2. Again, it's a grueler. That is so many matches going back and forth. Not to mention it's a Sunday. It's a school night. You got the Super Bowl tonight, too. There's so many different things. So if you're one of these 2 schools, you want to qualify for Division 2, well, you better hope that you do it pretty swiftly. So that way either you can get your studies in, if not, go to watch some pigskin being thrown around.
Oh, man. Andy, I've miscast me, buddy. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Alrighty, well, I'm not sure what we've got next, to be honest with you, Andy, but I'm really looking forward to get into this first game of the day. So I believe we're probably on a lower bracket to show you guys. Here we go, to show exactly what's going on for the map set for the first series of the day. Mikado, Fortress, 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 and Hotel. Goodness me, Andy. Long haul stay inside the fortress.
I mean, you want to ask for a map set that could end in a blink of an eye? This is it right here. I mean, the only map mode combination that you'll probably see a little bit more of a slower pace if we do end up getting there is that map 5 of Hotel Search and Destroy. But, oh man, this fortress workings of what is a 2-slice bread Hotel Mercado sandwich is just very interesting to me within to say the least. I mean, Fortress control. What do you want me to say about it? We're going to be able to see it one way or another. It could honestly be an absolute defensive affair. That's what we have seen in Challengers. That's what we've seen all the way up to the CDL. If you're unfamiliar, literally witness Minnesota Rocker just completely exasperating around. Sat in spawn for about 90 seconds because they knew they had a life lead. It's all about that round 5 defense, but you couldn't have asked for a better start when it comes down to these 2 teams. Especially for West Point and USNA, for everybody watching it for the first time, even you and me included, Brody, about what these 2 rosters do end up looking like. You'll get a lot of good answers on Mercado Hardpoint. It is notorious for having 2 SMGs and 2 ARs.
Yeah, I actually really love watching Mikado Hardpoint. There's, I think, a lot of propensity for comebacks on that map in particular. I'm not too sure what it is about Mikado Hardpoint, just generally speaking, but I always love casting it just because of how close the games can be on that. But also, you know, controversial opinion here, I also do like watching Mikado Search and Destroy as well. Mikado Search and Destroy, Fortress Search and Destroy, excuse me. So, you know, we'll see. Maybe I'm just, I like Hydra as a map, so I know people hate me for that. Who knows? Who knows? All I know is we've got a great map set ahead of us. I cannot wait to get into the first set of the day. If you're a Fortress fan, goodness gracious, this first series is for you. Army West Point versus USNA Esports. That is going to be the first match coming up very, very soon. Before we get there, though, I believe we're going to send it to a very brief break here before we get our first match of the day set up. So we'll get that going. We'll be back very, very soon here with Army West Point versus USNA Esports, the first match of the day. Alright everybody, we're back here with the CCL D2 qualifiers. Army West Point going head-to-head with USNA Esports, and we're kicking things off in this best of 5 on Mercado Hardpoint, one of the more close quarter combat maps we have here in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yep, gonna be looking towards what these two teams look like fundamentally, but we'll always keep it with a grain of salt, especially with the high standards that we watch on a weekly basis. Regardless of the matter, it's a lot of good time that USNA are actually generating off of P1. Very unheard of, but what you're mostly looking for is right where player 4 and where 1 spawned up, where Richie is currently located at, is where we're going to be rotating towards next. That is what we consider a money hill here in Call of Duty, where you can generate the majority of time.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like curious to a certain extent, like obviously transitioning as a caster from challenges to CCL to see kind of what teams are going to be like in terms of making sure they know that is what they need to do. It seems like at the moment though, Army West Point, they've done a really good job at noting that they kind of need to make sure they prioritize that PT rotation. Kills starting to come on between Colo, Wildcat, and Salvadori. Here are 6 between the 3. And Army West Point, again, they get that first wave of gunfights in their favor. Now USNA Esports, they've got to try and find their way through. It's hard to do so, though, when the support and gunfire is being brought to the table by Colo, who now won 5 in a row. This is an early look here at a potential streak here for Army West Point.
Yep, get that 6th kill. You get yourself a cruise missile. The nade will at least clear it out. Colo actually gets one from the grave, so he will not get that 6th kill. That will not be a cruise missile earned. So time not necessarily being generated in an abundance level, but Army West Point, at least that they stabilize for now. They'll be able to soak up the back 20 seconds. You can see all of the GOAT's arrows on the minimap so far. Might send Winnie to maybe try to battle for some scrap time, but this rotation of the P7 spawns, well, it's delayed. Army West Point just hit through cuts, and they're already meeting the resistance at the door.
Yeah, this is a massive rotation coming out here from Army West Point. You need to make sure if you don't get the majority of time off the last hill, that you do secure the rotation to the next. And that is what USN Esports are trying to do at the moment. Klutz is going to be sitting inside, able to pick up at least 1 kill there against Colo. Has support and gunfire from 2 of his teammates. You can see him on the minimap there. So USN Esports in a really good position here to try and get control over this P3 hardpoint. But Army West Point, look at the arrows on the minimap. You can see them. They're positioning to try and break on through, but Richie goes a little bit early, and Lapper is able to get not 1, but 2 as well. Army West Point now effectively reliant on number 4 and number 3. Salvadori and Wildcat, those players, they do fall.
Salvadori just take his own life. Wait, there wasn't... You know what? Whatever.
I don't know, mate.
You hate to see it. Colo is double positive, 12 and 5, by the way, but this early rotation plus the break that came through from USNA is actually going to garner them a little bit of a life, or a little bit of a point lead, excuse me, but it looks like that Black Knights of Army are not done trying to fight for some of the scrap time. Zine has a 1v1 inside of the hardpoint versus Salvadori, but will inevitably lose it. So still 8 seconds to soak up here. That is just really, really small amount of time when you're thinking about the grander scheme of things. You have to reach 250 points just to be able to win the first map. So the rotation is here. USNA, they have 1 player in, but you already have reinforcements for the Black Knights in the back alley.
That was a lot of confidence on face there to win at least not 1, but 2 engagements. Now they're going to have to regain control of the hardpoint. USNA trying it around the back line. Klutz with a massive 1 versus 1 against Richie, and that will clear some space here potentially for a teammate. But inside the kill feed, Colo will be able to pick up 1 with the car bomb on towards Klutz, and Salvadori following up with another 1. Still not enough just yet for you at Army West Point to secure the point. They haven't quite removed USNA all their presence from around the truck. Now the trade's starting to go down here, being watched from both sides. Army West Point going to get caught out by Zin there from the alleyway. Is he ready to take down Salvadori as well? Apparently not. And still, this is a kind of a real battle on this hardpoint going down. Neither team able to get a kind of a wealth of time just yet.
A very scrappy first set of hardpoints so far. I mean, I guess you're more or less counting that blessing if you're either of these 1-2 teams, because it's just like you said, Brody. Here on Mercado Hardpoint, it seemingly can happen at the blink of an eye that you can start sequencing a lot of these different hardpoints together and really start running away with this time. So 88 plays up against 77. Again, USNA, they might have the rotation, but it's the initial gunfights. Army West Point, they've already found themselves in.
Again, first couple of gunfights in the favor of Army West Point here. They've got the 2-for-1 advantage on towards Lapper up top and able to work back that for control. Colo, though, not done. Will actually swing around for a Zin too. So a lot of massive gunfights going the way of Army West Point. Again, it's very easy to lose a full 60 off the back of the hard point. And, well, I think Army West Point making sure that just doesn't happen. And a lot of that down to Colo, who at the moment at 20 and 8. Andy, again, we'll talk about kind of spotlighting players here in the CCL. Colo proving his worth.
I mean, casual stuff. He's 20 and 8. You're barely even scratching double-digit kills for any one of these players for USNA. So you're mostly kind of leaning on Colo to continuously find a lot of these eliminations, but you don't want to have the London Royal Ravens effect here, Brody. And that's not just a dig at you being across the Atlantic Ocean. That's mostly just because if Colo's finding all these kills, you need to be turning this into a plethora of time. All of these stray eliminations, they don't mean anything. You're looking for the right kills, and that's around the hard point itself. So Colo's going to double up here with Richie. Stun is in. Lapa's going to be able to get that elimination, but Colo's going to be there for the trade. That's the right kill to find to generate some time.
Not done that though, is it? Zin is going to be inside for the 15. Colo should be aware of this fact, and now we'll go for the Chal around the corner, checks to right, but Zin not really having the awareness that Colo's still around. You should be aware at this point, to be honest, the way that Colo has been playing so far in this hard point. And again, now one of the crucial moments in this game. This has been a really close game between these two teams. Army West Point now starting to build themselves a series advantage, and again, it's once again off the back of Colo on yet another 5 spree inside the Cantina hardpoint, or the second Cantina hardpoint, which we should say. Back 15, Zin's going to get this one last look, already weakened, damaged by that first engagement, and well, that nade is just not going to help him. He will be taken out of the equation there. He will go down, and again, the back scrap time will be secured by Colo.
And now you're starting to build a little bit of a lead. About a whole hard point in between these two teams. About 60 seconds in between the two. And the rotation over towards P7 has already been won. Colo lapped his streaks, by the way, on that 6 free. Doesn't mean he's going to get another cruise missile. He still has that in his back pocket, whatever he's feeling spicy to call that out of the sky. Salvador inside the hard point, though, locking things down in the back 10 area. With the TAC 56, gets some help from the Wildcat guy. That means that you're going to be able to at least keep this secure for now. Close spawns into effect. USNA are close here in small.
Army West Point in a really good situation here. 80-point advantage over USNA Esports. This needs to be a pretty quick break from the USNA side. Kilo, we know how damaging he has been, and he's not even really the one doing the damage at the moment. It's Salvadorian Wildcat providing the gunfights in and around the hardpoint. Lapa, can he survive for much longer? No is the answer. Back 20, and even that at this point in the game is valuable time for USNA Esports, and you can just see kind of the urgency for USNA here. Even with that back 20 being important, they have to give it away, and now as they focus on the next rotation, that might not go their way either, with Salvadori trying to lure in the day of not one, but a second player as well. I know he hasn't weakened, hunts him down for the pistol, but not going to be able to get that just yet. USNA Esports, they will hold on to P1 for the moment.
Yeah, but how long can you honestly hold on to P1? Yes, they generated about 25 seconds off of it, but you have to make sure that you not only generate time, but you also negate Army West Point from getting any time off of P1 itself. Keeping it scrappy is going to be your first step if you are USNA. Getting those close spawns for P2 is going to be the next task that is on their very long laundry list to do. And just as soon as I talk about it, Richie, Polo, they collapse on P1. They'll completely eviscerate the goats off of the hardpoint itself. And you already have Salvadori cutting down reinforcements out from the cuts as well.
Things not exactly looking great here for USNA Esports. They haven't really got the time that they wanted off the back of P1, and of course they rather pivotally don't have control of the rotation for P2. They need some heroics here. Someone's got to don the cape and break in towards the next hard point. Will it be number 6 on the map? That would be Klutz, ready for Colo, a 1 versus 1 that really would be the hardest on the game. And well, Colo just toying with them at the moment. He's been provided the coverage from the windows. Wildcat doing everything required of him, and Colo just dancing and prancing around the outside of the hardpoint. Army West Point, they are 30 seconds shy of victory, and Colo just continuing to burn through these players.
We'll be able to close it out here. 20 seconds are all that is required, and all of USNA are spawning on the back alley side. Polo just playing the close corner. There's the first. How about a second as well? The reinforcements might be coming through from Barbershop, but I don't even think you're going to be able to get here in time. Fades is running. He's got to be able to have to just bulldoze his way through the door. Can't simply get there in time, Brody. It was a close affair through about the first 4 hard points of play, but an Army West Point just let USNA have it.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of summarize that game, right? It's just like, yeah, it looked like a close game to begin with. Then Colo really started to heat up and get 5 spree after 5 spree, life after life. And I didn't even think that really was it. It was just, you know, making sure you got control of the rotation if you're Army West Point every single time. There's not really much that you could do there if you're USN Esports. You just started to run out of gas in the second half of the game. Yeah, Colo at 34 and 12. That's almost like triple positive. I can do maths. I can do basic. Oh, sorry. I can do basic math. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I landed.
32 of those 34 eliminations were non-traded, by the way. And I'm sure that Colo was probably sitting there looking at that best play coming through from Richie, who only really generated about 20 seconds of hard points. I was like, you got it for 3? Bro, I went on like 5 sprees. Like, come on now. Give him his flowers. It's absolutely deserved. But it's like I was talking about, you know, for those first 3 hard points, you and I were immediately talking about Colo. A snap of your fingers, and Colo was already up to double-digit kills. It was already close to triple positive into effect. You'll see it here in the respawns. Yeah. and 4. But then you started to see, once we got closer towards P4 at the tail end, going in towards P5, and then the latter half of the first set of hardpoints, that's when Colo took their endeavors a lot closer around the hardpoint while his team was set up inside the hill to make sure that nobody from the GOATs of USNA could get anywhere close to try to break that hardpoint setup.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, I don't want to say it was solely him. I mean, obviously, a lot of the slaying power was being done by him, but, you know, we look over towards this hardpoint that's going on right now in the replay package, and you can see that mostly it wasn't just Colo in certain moments. You know, there were moments where the AR firepower, the Overwatch was being brought to the table by players like Wildcat and Salvadori. Richie obviously had his moments as well, so, you know, I still think there's an element of a team effort being done there by Army West Point. We absolutely have to give Colo his flowers for finishing 34 and 12, and as you say, the big kind of underlining there is 32 of those kills being non-traded. Just speaks volumes about what he was bringing to the table. And I will say, you know, again, when it comes down to Mikado hardpoint, and this is something that maybe you guys online, if you're watching at home, if you're on a college team at the moment, you might want to kind of think about when you're in that setting is you want to have that kind of slaying sub inside the hardpoint. And obviously, you know, sometimes, you know, moving outside the hardpoint as well. Colo was just that guy, 1 minute 24 inside the hill, 34 kills. Just slayed the entire game.
Shout out Salvadori, though. I mean, 20 and 16,
yeah.
Sure, it isn't anything to cast a shadow over Colo's 34 and 12, but 15 non-traded kills, 11 assists. He's the second damage dealer for his team and the second in the entire lobby at that, with about 2,700 damage. We saw Salvadori really come into their own on P7, just playing those head glitches over by the back tents with that TAC 56. You know as well as I do, Brody, no SMG is going to be able to drop numbers if you don't have ARs watching those longer lines of sight. So shout out Salvadori, just playing hand-in-hand with what Colo was bringing to the table.
Yeah, and again, I think we see that as well, right? We saw it kind of on the cafeteria or the hardpoint, I think P2 and P6, right, where we kind of saw the support being provided there by the AR players for Colo just to kind of sit there. So, yeah, nice dynamic, I think, for Army West Point here, and we see that kind of translated into the map set as Mikado hardpoint will be going their way 250 to 130. A great start of the series for Army West Point. We should say, by the way, better than the series started yesterday. We did get to see Army West Point on broadcast yesterday, and like the first match of the day, that went all the way to Game 5. Against Toledo. They lost the first map in that series, even if it was a pretty close one. So much better start this time around for Army West Point. Next up in the series, though, Andy, is Fortress, Search, and Destroy. I said I've kind of got a soft spot for this map. I like to see it whenever we do get to see it.
Yeah, I mean, Fortress is an absolute playground for a lot of flexible players to come through, and that's why we started talking a little bit more about what Salvadori was bringing to the table. That long line of sight, you spawn in as a defensive player watching that mid lane coverage. That could shut down any sort of hopes for the offensive team to maybe try to hit through P1, come back through the middle of the map, and try to pinch out the defense. You won't really see too many B hits. Doesn't really happen all too often. That bomb site is out in Narnia for all intents and purposes. If you're familiar with the map at home, it's essentially P3. It's over by the fountain. Not exactly the easiest of the two bomb sites to get to. You do spawn pretty much parallel over by the gallows where the A-bomb is located at. So you'll probably see a lot of those executes going over towards A if we even get there as well. I mean, you got to be able to try to get towards that bomb site itself to plant that bomb before Colo finds himself a flank and probably be able to find a couple of eliminations as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting in a way, right, because we talk about kind of Fortress, Search, and Destroy, and the way that it's funny in a way because it's just a one bomb site map, excuse me. But there has been a kind of an evolution of strategies when it comes to this map over the course of time. I think teams have been a lot more comfortable with kind of just rushing off the rip on defensive side, just running in towards the A bomb site because you know it's the bomb site that teams are very likely, like 99% of the time, going to get into. You know, teams are going to kind of be likely to find their way inside the main building as well, inside munitions. Like, there are a variety of strategies that we might well see. And again, you know, we kind of bring it back to the kind of the setting that we're in, right, with CCL. There might well be a kind of a variety of strategies that we might not even see inside challenges or inside the CDL. It's kind of nice to have that variety here in Grassroots where maybe we might see stuff that we wouldn't expect. Hey, we might well see some B plants here, Andy. Who knows, bud?
Yeah, I'll keep it a $150 with you when it comes down to CCL Search and Destroy. Nothing is going to be uniform. Nothing's going to be formatted whatsoever. and that does really say something, especially when I have Army West Point going up against the Naval Academy here as well. So, hey, man, for as far as the Black Knights and the Goats are concerned, you just got to be able to play as a team. You know, those are some of those core fundamentals when you think about Search and Destroy. Even when you at home, you're sitting there, and I know everybody backs out from their Search and Destroy maps when it is CDL Mosh Pit, but regardless of the matter, when you do end up playing, it's all about the trade games. Because in Search and Destroy, respawns are not a part of this game mode. You get those 4 lives that you spawn in with. You only get that one chance for the absolute glory of winning the round. So, got to make sure that you get those trades. Got to make sure that you effectively play as a team. You don't want to be pushing out all by your lonesome and leave your team in a numbers disadvantage.
Yeah, you know what, Andy? We were talking about kind of geography early on, about kind of like where all these teams are situated in, and I'm going to learn a lot more over the course of the 2023 season. But I'm kind of always looking forward to like the additional names, like the colloquialisms of these teams. Like you call these guys the Black Knights for Army West Point,
Mascots.
And what's the other one for USNA? Yeah, the mascots. Like I got to learn all these mascots and stuff. We don't have this in the UK, really. Like I think we had like. I went to university in the UK. Obviously, we don't have an equivalent to this in the UK. I don't think anything close to it anyway. With like the Bulls, I think. Did you? What
Or I am a Terp, I guess. Yeah, I'm a Terp. Terrapin.
What is that?
Terrapin. That's the full name, but we call ourselves the Terps. It's a snapping turtle, Brody. Don't worry about it.
Mate,
We're good at basketball.
I might be educated, but not that educated. I don't know. I might have to
at the end of the year, you might know a little bit more about the United States geography-wise, but like, or geographical-wise, excuse me. But when it comes down to mascots, don't worry. Me and Shift, we got you, because we're gonna be talking about them constantly throughout the entirety of the year.
I'm just going to be listed. I'm just going to record every single one and watch them back and make it my mission. I'll be like testing myself. I'm going to have like
make
little
a
cards and everything.
spreadsheet of like just all the colleges, their mascots and stuff like that. Yeah. That'd be
just
great.
to make sure I know. Yeah, absolutely. The Black Knights is a great name though. I will say that much. I like that. It feels almost like Dark Soulsy in a way. I don't know. I'm not like a Souls kick at the moment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they used to like go by like the cadets or something, and then it was like their academy team, or I guess like not like their main football team started getting called the Black Knights, and then they just like adopted it in like 1999 or something like that.
Yeah.
But then their actual mascot, like if you go to like an Army game, I'm pretty sure it's like a mule. I have no idea. It's America. We're strange over here, right?
I don't know. It's cool. You wouldn't catch like my university in the UK going by the Black Knights. I love it, man. I love it. It's bold. It's brave. You love to see it, and this is what we want to see kind of gameplay out of Army West Point in the Search and Destroy. We are seeing it though in round number 1 from USNA. A player pushed up all the way towards the bomb site. This is what we were talking about. Players pushing inside the site. Unfortunately for USNA though, Army West Point, they're wise to it already. Lapper left up in a 1 versus 4, and goodness gracious. That is a fast Search and Destroy round.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at what Klutz just did off the rip, he goes and he plays the close quarter over outside of the side door that leads to Art. But beyond that, if you get a player in that position, you have to have a player that's either inside of open or inside of close, regardless, to be able to sit there, get the trade, get some team shots, or maybe you have a player that's pushed up into bottom single off the rip. None of those things happen, and Klutz was quite literally up Fortress without a paddle, so not exactly the things you want to see. Army West Point just played pretty standardized. They won their gunfights. They win the round.
Right, well, let's see if Army West Point have everything in the playbook similar to that for their defensive round. It doesn't feel like it. We can see number 3 on the minimap. That's Richie overwatching the A-bomb site. There'll be a little crack under the door that he'll have to watch over the A-bomb site. But they do have a secret weapon in from behind Colo. Channel is in a GoldenEye 007. He's looking for a second kill. There's no way he should ever get that. Phase has just been turned on. Colo eviscerates him. 4-0 start for Colo. Continuing how he means to go on from the hard point.
Yep, and now you got to essentially clear out Art. I mean, if you don't clear out Art, what's your best hope? That maybe you go over towards B. Well, Colo's going to have a line of sight through dub windows, and then you also have Wildcat Guy, and that's your teammate. That's not gonna help out Endeavors, and then Colo gets robbed of the ace by way of TK. Hey, if it's the strategy just to deny Colo streaks by taking down one of your teammates, I'm here for it.
We did say, right? Maybe we're gonna see some CCL exclusive strategies. Maybe that's one of them right there. They got your teammates, the opposition can't get to speak in the round, but Colo nonetheless, he's definitely fighting for it. 5-0 start from Colo. And yeah, what a flipping on the head there of that round as Colo completely switches up what we expect out of a Search and Destroy round. I said you might see teams on the defensive side send players in towards munitions. I didn't quite think it would be so successful that they get there completely undetected, but hey, Colo continues to surprise us here on the CCL broadcasts. Now it's Army West Point back on the offensive side, and USNA Esports, they're changing things up a little bit. Instead of that close corner, Klutz goes on towards the bomb site for the heady against Colo, and Richie gets both of the players, leaves Wildcat left up in a 1 versus 4 situation. And that's a great adaptation coming out of USNA.
Yeah, it is, especially just playing against the strengths of what Army West Point are trying to play. I mean, Army West Point, look, if there's anything to depict away from the Mercado Hardpoint in the first 2 rounds of Search and Destroy so far, is that they want to get rather aggressive. One good testament of Search and Destroy's history is that if you're going up against the more aggressive team, you basically got to deny the space, just hold the line, and wait for them to give you those unforced errors, walk into your line of sights, and get those kills a whole lot easier. Klutz shows up in a big way there. I'll have to see if USNA can kind of feed off of that previous round, as there's already space being taken over by the Gallows. I mean, Richie's already on the bomb.
Yeah, you've seen exactly the same strategy coming out here of Army West Point. Trades go down on the side, and Lappa looking for 2 headshots. He finds both, and now it's Wildcat on the opposite side of the map, effectively in Narnia compared to where this bomb site is. It's going to go down regardless of what he thinks about the situation. The Wildcat's got to pull a 1 versus 3 out of his rear end, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in this situation. Has to check the post right corner. A lot of utility being thrown out, and that's a lot of information going the way of Lappa. USNA Esports have a great round there.
Again, I mean, when you're looking at the opening rip here, especially defensively for Army West Point, they all just try to, or 2 players rather, flood in towards the Gallows. The first was going to be the bait for Richie, then Colo has to be the switch. Obviously, he was able to find the first, but you're almost really hoping that Colo is going to be able to go 1 for 2 in that perspective after losing his teammate. Just straight trades are never going to benefit you, because when you're just Salvadorian, the Wildcat guy, and you're playing all the way on the backside of maps, USNA get full coverage of that bomb site, and you have to push right into those very narrow choke points.
All right, well, it feels like defensive teams here having a real good go at things in terms of getting themselves in towards A, but now Lappa channeling his inner Colo. You're going to find a route in behind. He will do exactly that. Picking up first blood here onto Salvadori for USNA Esports, but 1 player for him, or 2 has already gone down. Lappa is finding routes at the moment and hasn't been dealt with by Army West Point, but on the other side, his teammate, unfortunately, will go down. That will be Zin. Now Lappa left up in a 1 versus 2. He's looking for the ace. He's already earned that cruise missile off the back of that 6th kill, something Colo couldn't do in the prior round. And, well, I don't think Wildcat saw him here, so Lappa still unknown.
Lappa's teammates probably exclaiming that they ended up seeing just the shoulder of Wildcat guy. Allowed him to leave, did not get chowed out over by double stairs. Bomb will be planted here at A, so now Lappa's got to go. He already used Dead Silence at the beginning of the round. Has a cruise missile to use if he wants to, but here comes the challenge. Misses a little bit wide. Wanted to snap to the corner, but closer to the door was the enemy player of Army West Point. Stops the bleeding to Army West Point so far after a 2-round escapade from USNA.
Tell you what as well, right? If he gets that kill, there's very little chance of a trade coming through unless he repositions closer towards the bomb site, because that player is pushed all the way towards the back of the map, all the way back towards logs, we call it. So not really in a tradable position. That could have been really dangerous for Army West Point, but denied is Lappa. What he isn't denied of is that cruise missile. He's got it in the back pocket, ready to go. See when that comes out later on in the search and destroy, perhaps to dig USNA out of a hole. They might find themselves in a hole, though, if they don't grab the bomb off spawn. It feels like they might have forgotten something super important here, and they might also have to be very careful about players finding their way into munitions. This time, Colo does get caught out, but they haven't caught out Richie just yet, who is slowly approaching.
Doesn't have Dead Silence, so just slowly clearing all of Art. Yeah, you gotta be careful of that line of sight. You get a free one here. Now gotta run for his life. He was getting shot on the side, turns around, but won't be ready for the gunfight. But it's Salvador on the opposite side that's here to pick things up. 2v1 for Lappa. And
Lappa's just gonna run straight out in the middle of the map. How? How is Lappa allowed this much real estate? He will pick up the kill against that Salvadori. And now is there a response from Wildcat? Wildcat is just sticking in this position. Lappa is just running wild at the moment. He's not even using Dead Silence. He's not even using Dead Silence. Wildcat, not sure whether he's got the Astros cranked all the way up just at the moment, but certainly didn't hear Lappa either way. And Lappa off the back of that now, with back 30 seconds, has enough time to get this bomb down if he so chooses, but still checking every single nook and cranny for a Wildcat. Might well give Wildcat the time here to win the 1 versus 1. Will not stop the bomb going down regardless. Now, what does the route look like here? They're about to butt heads around the backside. Wildcat with a better weapon for the situation, and it will work out for him despite not being the most standard of procedures.
Yeah, that's tough right there. I mean, the patience for Wildcat guy just completely pays off. He was just laying prone, top maps. And in that 1v1, with Lappa having to check literally everything, like you were saying, every single nook and cranny that is offered to itself around Art on the backside of Art over by Secret. There's just so many different corners you have to check that Wildcat guy, whether it was communication with his teammates or not, goes to check the B-bomb site, doesn't see somebody planning it. So by proxy, you know that Lappa is going to be over by that A-bomb site itself. Just completely goes all the way on the backside past dubsteps. And be gifted the free kill because, hey, that's where Lappa wanted that post plant to be from anyway. So 2 rounds in a row answered back by 2 teams twice over.
Army West Point want to retrench themselves in towards munitions pretty early on towards this round. I'm sure nobody from USNA filters their way through. Salvadori backing away for the moment. Just checking the street elsewhere. First blood has been drawn for USNA, getting a player on towards the bomb site, quickly removed, and now they want to get a player back towards munitions. That player would have been Lapper, and as slowly as he walks up the stairs, he is quickly removed by Salvadori. Now this will leave Klutz and Fades in a not-so-great situation. Not really much map control at all here in the 2 versus 4.
The bomb's going to get planted as well, and yeah, the moment you start pushing through Art, that's a head glitch that you really have to be worried about. And Fades, try as you might, he gets shouted over by cannons. A flawless round for Army West Point. That is now 3 on the bounce of the 2 that got answered from the Goats after the 2 initial rounds were won by West Point. But nonetheless, it's map point coming through from West Point. They're really falling into their own. In these past 2 rounds, we haven't really seen, well, I guess in that one round in particular, Colo did end up slow up exponentially, I will say that much. He's not trying to go for egregious pushes anymore. He's playing a lot more with his team, and it's enabling them to be able to lock down these team shots, especially for the Wildcat guy on a 5 spree.
Another spree potentially on the cards here for Army West Point. I believe the cruise missile from Lapper is still in play as well.
Yeah, it is.
So they can still use that later on down the line. But look at Army West Point here.
Yeah, they're calling
Defensive side, and there you go. There's the cruise missile coming down here. It will remove Army West Point from fight, and well, they actually pick up 2 kills, but they didn't manage to stop Colo from pushing all the way through. He doubles down here and able to pick up 1, so Colo still giving Army West Point a chance and eviscerates a second. Now looking for number 3. Lappa still in close proximity here to Colo. If he gets good timing, might be able to pick up this kill scot-free, and maybe the second on towards Zins. There you go. Now looking for the ace in this round. Colo switches out towards the knife, but not able to get it done. Now a 1v1. Wildcat still on 5 in a row. We're going to close out this search and destroy. Lappa over towards Gallows he goes here, and Wildcat again, just the better weapon for the situation. Army West Point able to take the search and destroy.
4 rounds in a row at that, and you called it wonderfully, my friend, is that cruise missile was very much so in play, that you need to just try to stop the momentum of what West Point were putting together for themselves, streaking together all of those rounds. So you call the cruise missile, you get the information, you get those 2 kills, but the information just was either not conveyed or was misconstrued, because like you called, Colo still found a route. He got it from behind, and he somehow turns that 1 kill into a crazy second in the drop shot through the nade smoke at that. Whether that player is weak or not, that is the influence on the map that we saw from Colo and the Mercado Hardpoint, and it's what continued on through the Fortress Search and Destroy, and even towards the very end there. I'm sure that Lappa's going to be very frustrated with himself, because that's now twice on over. He lost that 1v1 to Wildcat because he had the TAC 56. He could just hold his irons and wait for Lappa to move into his LOS.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because you make a really good point there. You talk about kind of the communication of teams, and this is, again, one of those talking points that we're talking about in kind of context of, you know, the upper echelons of play, you know, CDL challengers versus kind of what you're expecting to see here in CCL, and maybe the kind of the grassroots of Call of Duty Esports. Because, yeah, like Lapper in that situation, for those of you guys who maybe don't know, you were able to see basically where everybody is on the map with that cruise missile. Like, you can see them, like the red dots on your targeting system, you know where they're at. So you kind of need to call that, hey, look, Colo's coming on the flank here, guys. I don't think that information was quite passed correctly, as you said, Andy. And, you know, maybe kind of one of those points of failure here that USNA might be able to look at for the future. But regardless, again, you know, at 6-2 search and destroy, there were more than just a kind of that one moment. It was a very kind of dicey search and destroy overall.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just search and destroy. It can honestly crumble down to be this mixy on a map mode combination like Fortress Search and Destroy. 10-4 for Colo. Continuing on with his antics. It's not triple positive, but it's pretty damn close. 7-2 for Wildcat as well. Damage numbers, honestly, no, they're not accurate. 4 and 8 for
you were thinking about it.
I mean, it started to look a little true. I'll keep it a buck, but it's just not going to be the case at all. First Bloods are looking pretty good, though, nonetheless, whether they're true or not. Colo was influential in those very first 2 rounds. Whether it was the bait and switch from Richie in round number 2, or even more so than that, just finding those routes, getting in from behind, and finding those quick kills. There's only so much that you can do for Lappa when you're last alive, time and time again. It's going to be a lot to ask that you have to be able to get 3 kills in a round just to be able to convert it in your favor, but it is what it is. Now you got to start a reverse sweep.
Alrighty, well, Army West Point now 2-0 up over USNA Esports. As you say, Andy, the reverse sweep is now what we need to see for USNA to survive, by the way, here in the D2 qualifiers, as this is the lower bracket after all. You lose this one, you're going down towards the open brackets for the season of CCL. It's all still to play for here in the CCL qualifiers. We're back just after this break with Matt. Hey everybody, welcome back here to College Cup for the 2023 season. We're 2 maps deep into the qualifiers for a very long day of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 action. Might not be that long for USNA Esports though. They're 2-0 down in the series right now versus Army West Point. And those first 2 maps, I mean look, they had something to say in the conversation for the Search and Destroy, but it wasn't that much, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some things to be talked about within those first 3 hard points, really, when we were going through Mercado and those 2 rounds that they won. What was it, round 3 and round 4 that they were able to win, but they lost at 6-2, and it seems that the apple does not far fall from the tree when it comes down to Army's winning ways, following the tradition of their football team beating Navy time and time again. I think it's like 62 versus 54 at this point when it comes down to Army versus Navy in football. Who's to say that the Call of Duty scene won't be able to follow suit here as well?
I don't know what... do those guys have football teams, mate?
I'm talking about pigskin over here, Brody. Not talking about kickball.
I don't know what that is, mate.
All right.
I don't know what that is. I
Right.
just... Talking rubbish, mate. Football, they don't even use their feet! Regardless, here we go. Here's a look over towards the map set for this best of 5. 2-0 up, as we said, for Army West Point at the moment. And as we said, those first 2 maps weren't really kind of, I think, to hit on it right. The rounds number 3 and 4 in the Search and Destroy went USNA Esports' way. It was a relatively close hard point up to basically the 50-yard mark in the game. And then past that point, it was just like Army West Point just had their way. So we now need what's known as a reverse sweep, and to kind of define that for you guys at home, if you're not familiar with the term, the next 3 maps need to be won in a row by USNA Esports, basically, and that's kind of what we mean by the reverse sweep. The sweep, of course, generally speaking, meaning the 3 first maps in a row being won. USNA Esports, though, I mean, how realistic is that at the moment? Because your heads are probably not in the best space. You've got battered in the first 2 maps. You need to kind of have a full mental reset here going into Fortress Control.
Yep. I mean, it's a lot to ask, isn't it? Especially when we go back and we really dissect that respawn in map number 1. Because Control, if you're unfamiliar, it is technically a hybrid game mode, though closer to respawn than it is the objective being that you have to capture those segments of progression. The A zone, the B zone, you can walk away with those segments. That's great. If you can win an offensive round, congratulations, because you did it on what is technically the hardest Control map here in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but you got to be able to slay along the way. You can't just rely on getting those segments and not get kills to boot. You spawn in with 30 lives on each side. Those kills will continuously and incrementally give you a whole lot more map positioning. It's the same exact venue on Fortress. That mid lane from Stables past Blacksmith all the way over towards Trucks and P1, that is going to be your main focal point for offense and defense alike, to make sure that they maintain control, to always battle out for that map's building, to either continue on with the spawn trap, break out of the spawn trap, or to be able to get more map positioning to then convert one of these 2 zones.
Yeah, the one thing I will say as well is, you know, we kind of go back to what we saw in map number 1 for Army West Point, and it's kind of like one of the big things we pointed out was not just kind of Colo going off and doing his thing with the sub, but also the amount of AR pressure being controlled in the middle of the map by players like Salvadori and Wildcat. And the thing is, on a map here such as Fortress Control, you need AR pressure. You need ARs to kind of be locking down that middle of the map that you were just talking about, Andy. And we know that Army West Point are absolutely capable of that here coming into this Fortress Control. And that really, I think, kind of translates over to the conversation for USNA Esports is their key to victory. Make sure you shut those AR players down, get yourselves out of a potential spawn trap, and you might well find yourself in a position where you can maybe even win an offensive round here on Fortress Control, however unlikely that sometimes might be. But in towards this Control we go, and Army West Point right off the rip. We talked about them getting past that 50-yard line. They seem to have done it with ease.
Yeah, I mean, I have never seen a more passive defensive setup in Fortress Control, but, I mean, Klutz is finally going to start moving. He gets his first kill, but he was just sitting on the B zone for a long, long time rather than trying to shut down that mid lane. It still allows Wildcat to stop that clock. That first segment will come through before Fades can contest. Does have to worry about Colo over by the bench, and he will get that elimination. So now USNA Esports, they're on the outside looking in, trying to make sure that they can try to get over towards that A zone before it fully tacks over.
Yeah, a lot of progression already going the way of Army West Point here. Lapa, though, has something to say about it. Pistol kill on towards Wildcat will remove him from the point, but not enough just yet to remove all of the presence of Army West Point, as once again it is Colo starting to push through the munitions building. Just trying to create some space at the moment for his team to get off the respawn point. Again, getting past that 50-yard line, getting across the middle of the map is the aim here for Army West Point as they attempt to do that. And Colo having a big part of that, surviving somehow. Almost gets away with his life there, and in the end, he will finally fall. Salvadori left up in a 1 versus 3 and not able to get anything done. It's okay, because the trophy system in this game is way too powerful and will be taken out. Lapa, an posthumous kill for Salvadori there, but Army West Point, for the first time in this game, finally pushed back towards the spawn point with USNA in map control.
You gotta watch out for that 5th player. That trophy system is definitely a tough gunfight to go up against. But that 3rd segment did get depleted over at A. We're down to 27 seconds here at Army West Point. They are down by 3 lives. These stray trades are not going to benefit anybody. Wildcat's going to touch that B zone slightly, gets a 1v1 and towards the back. Will take down Klutz. He's turning his attention to go back over towards A. He has a teammate over there. It's Colo, who off screen is able to find one. He has the reinforcements as well. Brody, this will be an extra 60 seconds, and Wildcat's still on the flank.
And they could swing as well. Yeah, I was going to say, they could swing with Wildcat there. If they manage to capture A, Wildcat gets 1 frag there. They could swing straight towards B from A. But now as a couple of players do go down, all of this will fall on the shoulders of Colo, who is, believe it or not, once again flanking through munitions. Has a lot to do here. Just 1 frag would really be enough to damage the defensive line for USNA Esports. But stunned up as Colo, unlikely to win the 1 versus 1, and will be taken down there by Zin. So back towards the respawn point now for Army West Point. Now looking to make their way through the munitions building. Flank being perpetrated here by Fades, and a successful one at that, as he will take down Salvatore, and it does reset Army West Point momentarily.
Back to the mid lane drawing board. Down 2 lives, but you really do feel like it's just 1 good hit and turning this into an B zone conversion, and that's the opening. Wildcat's going to take down Lappa on the backside of the Pallets truck. Salvadore's pushing through open. There's collapsing coming through. USNA, now they're reeling. The stack is here.
Yeah, and remember, any tick of progression will go a really long way here in this game. Maybe getting the whole capture would go even further, as there's still a couple of players to deal with. If you're USNA Esports, the Pinstripe kill feed, really favorable somewhat, at least for USNA, but they haven't done the job just yet. Still 2 players hanging around. Richie, one of them, he will fall. And now it's Colo trying to just keep these players unguarded. Inside munitions he goes. 25 seconds now on the clock, and Colo just completely outplays in there. He never quite expects him to be in that position.
Oh, no.
And Colo surviving. Colo should never win that 1 versus 1 against Klutz. Klutz just gets completely outplayed. And now with 16 seconds left here, it's okay, because USN Esports, they've done enough damage here to push Army West Point away, but not enough to make sure that their lives are in their favor. It's Zin left up in a 1 versus 4. Zin just trying to hide away from these players, but these guys, they should just pick corners in this situation so they are not tradable. I was thought for a second there maybe it was possible, but no. Army West Point in that situation, they win out on live, just consistently getting past the mid-map, which frankly USNA never really had full control over.
No, they didn't. Even frame 1 off the rip, they never really maintained that mid-map coverage. It was just stray coverage, maybe 1 player inside of maps, 1 player maybe pushed up towards stables. It just was never really a cohesive action coming through from the GOATs of USNA to maintain that mid-map presence. One saving grace, though, I guess you do have. If you are the GOATs, you did lose by lives, so that 6th segment did not end up coming through. Talk more about that, and if we do end up going to a round 5 defense, but it's got to start here if you are USNA, and while Colo's continuing on with their antics, they find 2 to start.
Pretty good start here from Army West Point, and a much better start, I think, notably, than what USNA had last time around. They've got players inside maps, they've got players pushed up towards the stables on A, and this is the struggle for USNA Esports, right? You've got to get out of your spawn. You've got players sitting in corners, and you've got to make sure you check corners like that. Richie cannot be allowed to get 1. He can't be allowed to get 2 like that, for God's sake. And now players are starting to filter out, though. A massive 1 versus 1 for Phase on towards Wildcat would open up the lane over towards A. Progression can now start to be made here for USNA, but you find yourselves in an effective 2 versus 3 for the moment. Zin has come to help out, and well, Lappa will fall. Zin goes down. There goes Fades as well. Army West Point, they just make it look so easy.
50 seconds remaining, and you have only lost what is now 4 lives if you are Army West Point. So it's just about holding the line. Richie's back inside of maps. Check the corners. Doesn't check the right one, though, and Klutz just completely gets taken down. Richie now can just continue to be a nuisance here in this positioning. This is the spawn trap that you always have to be fearful of when you play Fortress Control. Ever since losing that 1 life and now down to 26, Army West Point can do no wrong.
Yeah, every time I go to bed, I dream, I have nightmares of this exact spawn trap that USNA Esports are in at the moment. It doesn't actually help when Klutz takes out his teammates a bit. Klutz there, you might say, living up to his name in the moment, as Richie picks up yet another 2-piece, innumerable of them so far in this game, even at 14 and 11. This defensive round, for Army West Point has just been absolutely sublime. USNA trying to filter through at the last second. 1 second on the clock. Can anybody touch? No is the answer. Despite being a wave of kills there at the end, they finally escape. To be fair, for the 2nd time. But it's just not enough. Not a single progression will go their way in that round.
Yeah, and that's quite alarming when it comes down to it for USNA. Again, this is obviously a very defensive-sided map, is Fortress Control, that you never really would have expected that, not with the way that Army West Point were converting the mid-round affairs of the opening round here in this map number 3. So, gotta have it here. If you are USNA, you need a full hold, and they needed to answer back with some segments of progression of your own if you hope to maybe get a round 5 defense, but then it would come down to kills. Speaking of that, well, Army West Point are just absolutely slaying out. Salvador comes into this round on a 5 spree itself, looking for kill number 6. This is a really tough chow to try to take. He's holding his irons, and he gets the better of Klutz. Kill streak has been earned. Not to mention how he stopped the clock here at B.
Yeah, again, it's that get out of jail free card for Salvadorian, really for Army West Point, that they can utilize later down the line. I don't even know if they're going to need it, though, at this point. Again, a wave of kills going in their way. Now it's going to be trades going down. Salvador is still left alive on the point, and finally, it will be a Semtex that befalls him. Fades with the 2-piece there on the point, and USNA able to clear house on B at least. The problem is, again, though, they not only need to clear B, they need to reset themselves towards the middle of the map. They haven't been able to do that, and it's the presence of players like Colo and Wildcat on this point, which is just so problematic. The second progression on A will now go their way. Cross-map coverage being brought to the table by Colo, looking for yet another kill there. Will not be able to find it. A contestant will come through at the last second. Will it be enough? No, Lapper cannot win the crucial 1v1 against Wildcat, so Army West Point, once again, they capture A, and they might have a chance path over towards B.
Yeah, they're converting more and more space all the way through munitions. You got 2 players over here. You got to clear them out. Klutz takes down Richie. You still have Salvadorian towards the back, who, you guessed it, you see it on the screen. He still has that kill streak in his back pocket. He does throw some shots back pallets, but this is more of a distraction than it is anything. Not all the defenders are looking over on this area of the map. Colo elsewhere is able to at least find one, but they stabilize, do the goats of USNA. They find the kills required. And they've been chipping away at that life deficit, just down by 4 now.
Yeah, there is still a path to victory here for USNA, even if it's kind of a thin path, obviously, with the situation that they're in, the context of an offensive round already being won by Army West Point at this point in time. You can still win at least this defensive round. Just keep Army West Point at bay. You have to have sublime mid-map coverage, and that is still not really being brought to the table here by USNA. You can see that mid-map coverage on the middle of the map. Fades is allowing players to get through the double doors. Richie now going to bring this cruise missile in. It will force all the players inside towards the munitions building. It enables them to get across towards the point, and now here comes the army. They're ready to go. The cavalry has arrived, and now the first stick through, the second about to be through as well. Kills in the kill feed going the way of USNA. The only player left alive that can do anything about this will be Fades, and quickly fading is the lives of USNA here in this qualifiers. Army West Point 3-0 in the series and 3-0 in the control to move on.
Sheer destruction. Again, it only takes one good push, and with that one kill streak that Richie had in his back pocket, it just conveys all the information, and it confirms it as well that, hey, there's only really one house of salvation. There's only one big building. It is going to give you refuge from that massive ordnance that is the cruise missile, and that is inside of munitions. Still able to at least find one kill. I don't even know how that happened. Maybe some of the shrapnel, maybe like off the bounce, was able to come through the window, was able to get the kill. Regardless of the matter, it was the opening that you needed to then flood onto the zone, get 3 players stacking over there, and you see how fast that segment of aggression does come through when you have 3 players on the control zone itself. That then forces all of USNA just to whittle their way through these very narrow choke points where, you guess it, all of Army West Point are sitting there and they are holding their irons, just waiting, licking their lips to get those kills. They get them. They win the control.
Yeah, really well played, especially towards that end as well, with Richie using that streak in the exact right circumstances to make sure they had a free path over towards B. I just think kind of a recurring issue there for USNA Esports, and this is something, again, that we talk about kind of you guys at home can apply to your own gameplay. When it comes to Fortress Control, generally speaking, it's a very easy map to understand. If you're on the defensive side, you just need to make sure you're being constantly aggressive through the middle of the map, making sure you've got players watching all the lanes off the respawn point, because there are very small, as you said, Andy, respawn choke points to get through, right? USNA just were not doing that on both defensive efforts. When they lost control of A, they retreated almost towards the munitions building, towards the street. That's just not the right way to play it in that situation. But as we always say, kind of, there's an opportunity to live and learn off the back of that. You can kind of watch the VOD. As we said, these guys aren't out yet. They still have a chance to play by the open divisions. But still, for USNA, that kind of is the learning curve that I would take from that map.
Oh, absolutely. There's always something to learn at the end of the day. That's why we love talking about the collegiate athletes, and you have to be able to bring that studies in towards your drive to win especially here in Call of Duty. There's just always something better that you can do, even to shut down Colo. You even see right here towards the end, 24-11, the cruise missile gets called in. It's just the overall cohesion that was coming through from Army West Point. That proactivity was certainly lacking from the GOATs of USNA. As we take a look at the stats, 26-11 for Colo, casual stuff, 2,700 damage for them. Wildcat was just sitting there just kicking his feet up. I mean, he had 9 segments captured in total, but he only had 18 total engagements for 1,600 damage. I would say definitely doing his job quite wonderfully, but it was the 6th spree that comes through for Richie, especially through round 2, and is going to give nightmares for USNA when it comes down to Fortress Control next time they play it.
Yeah, that's actually the key thing to me is, Richie's stats at the end of the game might not be that impressive, but I would like to see kind of what his stats were specifically for that round 2, because he was just so oppressive through maps. Again, it's a very small choke point which you need to escape through. Richie was just getting 2-piece after 2-piece inside that area of the defensive map, and yeah, just so annoying to deal with. They just couldn't deal with it. And off the back of that, again, a 3-0 in the control will lead to a 3-0 in the series. Here's a look back at how the series went for Army West Point, 250 to 130 inside Mikado Hardpoint, 6-2 Search and Destroy on Fortress. And then, of course, the return to Fortress went pretty well for the Black Knights as they win 3-0. See, getting it, Andy. I'm getting there with the mascots. Army West Point looking pretty good, I think. This is a really good start to day number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's the start to day number 2, right? But there's still so many more games that you have to play if you are Army West Point. You got through USNA COD, that's great, but now you have to go up against Buffalo Esports next, and whoever ends up winning with NJIT, and then University of Cincinnati, the Bearcats, out from there. So there's still a lot more COD that lets to be played. Again, 4 matches is what's on the docket for these teams in the lower bracket. If you want to qualify for that Division 2, it's just the one step in the right direction, a good warm-up, if you will, for Army West Point as they look very comfortable. The gunnies are hot. Now they need to find that consistency.
Yeah, it's a brilliant play from Army West Point as they will continue on in the bracket. As we said, though, we kind of framed it up before we even got into the match. There's still a very, very long road ahead for this Army West Point roster before they can even think about being in Division 2, because they've only got really one path. They've got 3 more matches ahead of them before they do manage to qualify. So, as you said, a long road ahead here for their matchup against our USNA Esports. For now, though, that is that one, 3-0 for Army West Point. We've got more College COD coming very, very soon. Before we get there, though, we're going to go to a very brief break. On the other side, it's going to be more CCL. Don't go anywhere.